You're about to listen to a clip of Morning Madness, a show that airs Monday through Friday for patrons of $5 or more. To hear full episodes, go to patreon.com/Joe Cronin Show and become a $5 a month Patreon. The following is a production of Corrupted Entertainment in association with The Joe Cronin Show. Listen to other episodes and shows on youtube.com/Corrupted Podcast.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to start getting back to having music and stuff on these shows, but for the time being, I've been in the basement recording these just due to the mess that is the house. We live in kind of like a split, we've talked about this. I live in kind of a split house at this point. It's like a split off house. It's like a duplex sort of, but not really, but kind of. And it's, there's just no room. Let's put it that way. There's no room, and due to like some of the stuff with me bringing the kids to school and everything, I haven't been recording Morning Madnesses at night. I've been recording them in the morning, and then they're coming out around morning, afternoon right now. So that should change probably just after the holidays. And again, I'm really looking forward to, taking this rent money from this place and putting it into a house, because it would be a lot bigger and better to do that. So still crossing the fingers that we can make that happen this year, as we've been trying to do for many years. And the good thing is, again, I would be hopefully choosing a house that has a dedicated either sunroom or office or something that could be an office, or garage that could be an office, whatever the case may be. Therefore, I could create my studio, and there I would always be able to record and to do things without bothering my family, without them bothering the show, and basically being able to be like, hey, I'm going to work for a few hours, and I could, the best thing about that would be, being able to go away for 3 hours, 3 hours in my own office area, recording podcasts, doing news stuff, being able to go out there when breaking news happens in the wrestling world, and then being able to record all our shows in there. That should really make life so much easier and allow us to provide more content, which is crazy. We provide a lot of content now, I think. I don't know exactly what the number is. Let's do the numbers. I don't know. It's kind of fun. But you guys are the backbone as always. So, I mean, we need, for sure, need your Patreon support. So, enough can't be said for that, because if you're not doing this, we ain't doing nothing. And it's all going away. So I appreciate many of you who increased your pledges by a couple bucks. You know what I mean? The other day I saw 8 people increase their pledge. But some of you guys buy $2, $1. That all helps. You know what I mean? Like 2 people increase their pledge by like $2. So it's an extra $30 a month. That's pretty cool. So that is much appreciated for sure. Because some people have to lower theirs. Some people have to increase them and stuff. But but $5 is the sweet spot. But I appreciate many of you that say, that it's not a big deal to increase it a little bit. Or I had some guy told me, for some reason he got rid of Netflix. I don't know why. So then he said he gave me half of the Netflix money on top of his $10 Patreon. So now he's doing $15. And I don't know what happened with him and Netflix, but because man, I don't know what I would do without Netflix. I'd be like, oh shit, like I don't know, man. That's all I watch is YouTube and Netflix. That's what I do. YouTube and Netflix. YouTube has really become the new, for the most part for me, the new radio. I look for podcasts. I look for instant reaction and talk, discussion, whether it's comedy or serious. I look for those podcasts on YouTube. And the best thing is once you find a YouTube podcast on video, then you can search their actual podcasts if it's easy. And, listen to it off YouTube or listen to it on YouTube. But either way, it's just amazing what's happened. That's the new radio, It's the new radio for anybody who just isn't in their car. Although, when I was delivering windows, or rather, I wasn't delivering windows, I was selling windows. When I sold windows, like actual physical windows, not the program, like I sold windows to people's houses, and you guys remember, some of you remember that, because I was doing YouTube when I was selling windows. And, I used to kill my data plan. I used to get calls from Verizon around the 20th of every month, like, you've exceeded your data plan, because I'd be driving everywhere just listening to YouTube, because I had 3-hour drives sometimes to a house. Imagine, like, I haven't made any money during the week on a sales job, on anything, and I drive 3 hours to Connecticut, and then the guy isn't home or cancels at the last second. and I just have to turn around and go home, and I'm not going to make any money that day. So it was just terrible. That job was crazy. But when I did get jobs, I sold 70%. They wanted you to sell 40%. They wanted you to sell at least 40%. And they were like, the top guys sell, like, some guys sell 80%. And it was like, I was selling 70%. I was killing it. But I couldn't sell if the people weren't home. And they were booking leads. Like, the people that booked leads for me, I don't know what it was. There was a senior guy ahead of me that they would book the better leads for. And I got pissed off at that. He would always go to a double vetted appointment or whatever, and he would get sales, and I would go to tons of appointments, and the people either wouldn't be there or would be like, yeah, we really didn't want to do this. They harassed us on the phone, and then we said, sure, come give us an estimate. You know, so I got really low potential type of sales. But when I first started out at that window sales job, most of my appointments were like a couple or like a married couple, like, hey, yeah, so we're thinking about getting these 5 replaced, you know, and everything, and because of the draft, or we're thinking about doing the whole house because of energy, you know. And then they're like, of course, they're like, well, we're not going to make a decision today, you know, and we're, you know, we've got a couple other people coming, or we've got these things. And I would overcome like almost all those obstacles every time and get a sale somehow. There was one time where these people were just like, absolutely not, but they had like, their window was like leaking and stuff, and I was like, let me do that window. Let me do that window for the cheapest price possible. And once you see the install of that window, you'll feel comfortable giving the whole project in the house to me, because I know that it's this is very personal to someone to work on your house. So let me do that window, prove it to you. Be here on the inspection of the window and get your thoughts on it, and then we'll talk about what we can do going forward. And they were like, yeah, let's do that. All right. So they said yeah to that. So, you know, I got credit for getting a yes, I think I made $20 because, or no, I made more than that. I made like 50, 60 bucks or something on one window. And then, they ended up doing the whole house, and they did the whole house. And not only that, but I could start them really high because their confidence was really high, and they definitely wanted to go with me after that. And they definitely had to say yes after that, because who are they going to say yes to after we just did a solid job on their window? Right, so I started really high with them, and they didn't like it a little bit, and I dropped down twice, and we were still above the mark. And that's how you do sales, you know, obviously. So we were still way above the mark, and I remember that was a crazy job, because I think I made $5,000 on that. So that was when I was doing windows, though. But again, like, you know, it was like, if you don't make a sale, you don't make any money. So I know sales. I've done so many jobs. I bring this up because I've done so many jobs in my life that it's crazy. Like, that's what the theme of this episode, I think, is going to be here this morning here, is working. Because I'm 33 now, and I got my first job. Well, let's fast forward. Let's rewind back. First of all, I did no work up until the age of 9 years old, right? I did no work. I was a kid living in New Hampshire with my fairly well-off family, right? We made, like, I called it rich. My mom said it wasn't rich, but I called it rich. My dad was a teacher in a college and an engineer. Okay, we had money. When that ended, when he died, and a few years after, or a year after, when she met this dickhead, drunken asshole guy, it was the weirdest thing, because my life was like totally from the 80s, like where dad is like a teacher with his suit on, who's an engineer, just like lots of people, you know, dads you see in some of the movies from back in the 80s. You know, he worked on computers. You know what I mean? He came home, he worked with calculators and calculus, and he had his suit, and he sat down, and my mother made food and was a homemaker at home. You know? Like, it was peaceful. My dad was quiet. He was very, like, you know, just nice. He was just very nice and quiet and logical, and we were just so well balanced, you know. And when my dad died, my mother started, you know, going out with this guy who was like a fucking psycho. Like, I mean, the guy was like a drunk shithead, and it couldn't have been more opposite from my previous life. So you guys know that. But anyway, the point is, he took the money. He convinced my mother to give him the money to create a company, a boating company, where, like, we were going to transport stuff to the islands and, like, do work, like, recovering broken, salvage wrecks, planting people's moorings in the ocean, all kinds of boating shit and just other stuff, like labor stuff. And my mother put all this money that we had from my dad into this dumb business. But she created the business, so it was our business. So suddenly I was involved. And I had to go every weekend and work with them. I wanted to hang out with my friends. I wanted nothing to do with this because, first of all, this guy was a dickhead to me. And he was, like, scary, and he would break stuff, and he would get drunk, and he'd be crazy. And my mother would fight with him, and it was just, I'd never seen my mother fight like this. I'd never seen people fight, like, other than on television. You know, my life was so peaceful, so quiet, like, it was amazing. I'd never seen people screaming at each other like this before. And I think that's when I started to develop my anger for stuff. Like, I became really angry. But the point of this is that I used to work on the boats, like, on the weekend. I would have to paint, like, rust lock the boats, paint the boats, scrape the boats. And I've got all the photos of this to prove it, because my mother used to love to take photos of it all for some reason. And from the age of about, I would say, 10 years old, probably the age of, no, 9. I would say probably the age of 9 years old to the age of 14. It felt like an eternity, though. It's funny, because it was only 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It was only 6 years. But it felt so much longer than 6 years. It felt like 10 years of my life. But it was only 6 years. And, you know, I can remember having to climb the top of a crane to paint it. You know, welding stuff. The bad news is I had to do all this stuff. The good news is I got to do all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I can say that I drove a forklift when I was 11 years old. I shouldn't have been driving a forklift. Like, it's like my mother was dumb. Like, I don't get it. And then this guy was a fucking dummy. You know, I drove a car when I was 12 because we had the lot, and this is in Massachusetts. You know, we're not in fucking Bumblefuck, Wyoming. You know, we're in, like, a populated area. Because the dude was hammered one time. It's like I drove a car to the store to pick him up and then drove it back, and I drove a forklift, I drove a crane, I drove a landing craft boat, an LCM that they used at World War II because we bought a landing craft. I painted that landing craft. I painted the bilges. We were in a storm one time on the ocean where the water was coming over, and we had several giant bilge pumps that we never used and that weren't hooked up. And all of a sudden, we were going to sink in the fucking ocean, and I was terrified. I was an 11-year-old terrified kid, and I'm running down and setting these bilge pumps up to dump water out of the boat, hopefully faster than the water was coming in. And they were giant, like, fire hose type bilge pumps. So they were firing water back out of the boat as it was coming in. And as we got close to the shore, you know, the storm had done its toll, and the gate on the front of the thing broke, and then water was rushing in, and we literally pulled up to the beach in Hingham, Massachusetts, halfway sunk. Like, it was terrifying, man. I'm telling you. So that was my job for 6 years, was randomly like, oh, we're going to be doing this or that or this other bullshit thing that my mother and him had us do. Like, if somebody's boat got wrecked somewhere and they were going to go put a boom truck on a landing craft boat to go pick up the fucking boat that was sunk, I would be there with them. I would have to go. And I'd be on the boat while this thing is tipping over almost because the weight of the boom truck and the crane picking up the boat underneath wasn't good enough, and the boat they were picking up was too heavy and filled with water. And the boat we're in is like tipping over sideways and could flip over while trying to rescue this guy's boat. And if anybody has ever seen the movie Captain Ron, my mother's boyfriend is like fucking Captain Ron. But if you took away all the fun, if you took away the fun and the happiness, and you just had the fucking insanity and dumb and don't give a fuck attitude, like, and, you know, whatever else Captain Ron comes with, he is like that. It was, like, terrifying. There's a scene in Captain Ron where he parks the boat, and they think they're going to die, but he parks the boat amazingly. That's what this guy was like. The boat could be tipping, almost ready to fall over, and you're just like, we're going to fucking die, and then bam, he pulls it out of the water somehow, and it was like, wow, this guy's crazy. I'll give him that. So that was my job I would say that was really a job, you know, and I got paid, you know, sometimes she'd pay me too. Like, they'd pay me. They'd be like, here's $100 or, you know, of course I would get stuff. I still got lots of presents as a kid because my dad dying, I think my mother felt like, you know, but still I didn't want to I would trade all that to not have been there, you know, to not be fucking. One time we had 300 outboard motors that we had to hand lift and carry down a hill and put them in a fucking dumpster thing. Like, that took like 2 weeks to do that, and I hated it. And it's like, just, there's so many examples of that I could give to you guys. Welding, torches, driving fucking forklifts, all this shit. And it sounds exciting, kind of, but it's not. It wasn't to me. I wanted nothing to do with that shit. And I'm not fucking engineered or spatially relations inclined. I'm good with, you know, socially and speaking and things like that. And I'm not good with all those things. Although nowadays, I mean, I could, you know what I mean? I know about how, you know, certain things work and oxygen and, you know what I mean, how to weld in certain ways. It was a MIG-TIG welder, too. It welded both. It's pretty fucking crazy. But anyway, I won't get into all that. Let's move on. So my first real job, though, besides doing that, which I always thought was child labor, to be honest. But the first thing that I did, as far as an official job, a real job, on the books job, was a grocery store. I worked at this grocery store here, and it was one of those grocery stores. Most of the grocery stores don't give a fuck, right? Like, you go in, you buy your shit, you leave. This is like an upscale grocery store that I worked at, where you like actually bring the cart out for the women or the men or whoever. The old lady needs help, you know, you bring out her cart for her. Sometimes you do that everywhere, like, right? But it was like, no, you have to do it. It was like, didn't matter if it was like a dude who's like 28 years old who was like ripped, like, you're going to bring the car out for him. You know, you would only not do it if someone said, I don't want you to do this. So it was a very high service place. Anyway, I loved it. And my friend, I was in a band with my friend, of course, and my friends all worked there. We all worked there. Everybody in the band worked there. And, you know, we did goofy shit. Like, the one time this big slab of meat came down the conveyor belt, and my buddy pretended to jerk it off, and this lady ended up looking, and she saw him doing it. And I'll never forget that, man. She was like, you were pretending to jerk off that, whatever. And, like, she was telling the manager, and he was like, I swear to God. He's like, I thought it was leaking, so I like rubbed it up and down and looked at it, and then he saw me, so I laughed because it was funny, but I was really just checking because it looked like it was leaking everywhere. And then the store believed him, but it was like, no, we were jerking the meat off. But we did all kinds of fucked up shit, you know. And I remember going from bagger to cashier to eventually they put me in hot foods, which I did not like, although it was a promotion. I didn't like it. But anyway, so I worked there. I ended up quitting there after a while because if I'm doing something I don't love, I always end up quitting, you know. And many jobs that I had, I didn't quit. I ended up either leaving or getting fired, or the company left or something. You know, it usually didn't end up being that I quit, but that the company went out of business or something like that. But this was a place I did walk away from, you know. I mean, almost every job I've ever had, after being there for about half the time I was there for, I became miserable for sure. Like, I definitely did. So after that, I took time off. You know, I just started doing my high school shit and my band stuff for a year or something, and then I started working in an auto parts store, and that was a big deal for me because I was just a driver. I was hired as a part-time driver. I was so like happy to be working there. I loved this, because I could get in my car and I could just drive wherever I wanted to go. Like, I didn't need to, you know, be stuck in the place or whatever. And not only that, but when it was quiet, when it wasn't that busy, I could go in the store and I would work in the store, and they would teach me. I sort of learned how to use the computer, about car parts and stuff like that. And I could help people a little bit. I didn't do a lot of it at this time, but anyway, what happened was the manager who hired me, one day the owner showed up. And I was like, what is going on? Why is the owner here? And I'm the only one there with my manager. And they told me, you know, Dan, watch the front desk. We'll be in the back. And I was like, what the hell? Okay. I was like, what the hell's going on? And I'm like, I don't fully know how to use the computer, so I hope nobody comes here to buy anything. Anyway, it turned out that the manager allegedly was stealing parts. And he was like leaving. He was like, it was just, I don't know what exactly he was doing, but apparently he was like really stealing shit. And when they got done talking in the back room, he was the first one to come out, my manager. And my manager's name was Joe, funny enough. He walked out, and he quickly, as he walked by me, and I kind of looked at him like a big brother type, like, because we were getting pretty close over there, and like, you know, having a good time, and I really enjoyed him, and I really enjoyed everybody there. And I remember as he walked out, I can still remember his tattoo on his neck, man. As he walked out, he looked at me and he said, real quick as he walked away, he just said, he goes, hey man, take it easy, okay? And I was like, okay. And I didn't know what the hell was going on. And then the owner came over and told me what was up. And then they helped me close the store, and then that was it. And when I came into work the next day, it was like I ended up being like the senior person there. You know what I mean? Because he quit, and recently, like I think a few weeks before that, our assistant manager person had quit, had left as well. So they were looking for somebody, and then he gets in trouble for this, and apparently he was stealing stuff. And you know, it was really crazy to me. And the weird thing is, they thought I was stealing at some point too. I think they didn't know, and they thought like I was in on it. Maybe he hired one of his friends or something. But the owner knew that I wasn't. The owner knew I was just a kid who was like, you know, I think I don't know how old I was, 19 or whatever, 20. I think the owner knew I was a kid, and you know, I was a good guy. But he had put his nephew in charge of the store, and he became the manager. And I think he was there kind of to watch things, to see how things are going and what was going on. And one day I had to grab the spark plugs for I don't know, it was like a Ford F-150. It was something to do with something. And I think, you know, I think accidentally instead of grabbing, I think it was 6 spark plugs. I forget now. I don't remember my car parts anymore, if it's 4 or 6 that a Ford F-150 would take. But I grabbed an 8-pack, and I threw it in the box, and I started talking to him, and I got distracted. And then I threw, you know, all the other parts were in the box that I needed to bring to them. And all of a sudden, the dude, like, reached into the box and was like, "What's up with this?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Why do you have 8 in here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. How many is supposed to go?" And I was like, "Oh, I forgot to take the other 2 out of the box." And he was like, "Hang on a second." And then he, like, called the office and shit. And he thought that I was stealing 2 spark plugs or whatever. And I got really angry because I was like, "Dude, I was like, what are you doing?" I was like, I'm not, what do you think's going on here? I was like, "I just forgot. I put them in the box as a full pack." I'm like, how would I know to steal something that, like, you're the one that gave me the order, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know what am I going to do with 2 spark plugs? But the guy fucking was seriously calling the fucking office. And, like, was really thinking that I did it. And we had been friends for, like, a few months, too, like, talking pretty closely. And he'd seen me, and, like, it's not like I'm just some random. And so that really that pissed me off, man. I went outside. I remember smashing a light or something. I smashed a couple things outside because I was mad that he thought I would steal something, because I've never stolen anything, and I wouldn't steal. Why the fuck would I steal something from a place? At the time, I was getting $300 a week there. And a bonus for my car, too. So, like, why would I steal 2 spark plugs and put my fucking, like, $400 a week on the line for, like, this dumb shit? And that pissed me off. And I remember I went to see the owner because, like, I caused such a problem because I started smashing stuff. And then he told them, like, that, like, all this bullshit about feeling safe and all these things. Because, like, I lost my temper, went crazy. I went fucking nuts. And I really did, because he wasn't talking to me. He wasn't saying, "Oh, my mistake, you know, I thought that maybe something was up. I'm sorry, you know, because of what happened with the manager and everything else, you know, I've been on alert about stuff and I overreacted." You know, none of that. Just like, fucking, I don't believe you, basically. And that really pissed me off. So when I got to I went to the office. They told me to come to the office, and I did. And I was like, "Are they going to fire me? Because I'm going to sue them, because I didn't steal shit." And so I went to the office, and the guy was like, "I know you didn't take anything." He's like, you know, I talked to the guy, you know, the manager there. I told him that he was wrong, and that, you know, I know that you're not like that. And he's like, "It doesn't make any sense either." He's like, "And nothing has gone missing since, you know, the other guy's been gone." He's like, "All the inventory's right." He's like, "I know you." He's like, "I know you didn't do this. And, you know, I want you to go back there, and, you know, he'll apologize and you'll apologize, and you guys will be fine. And I don't, you know, going forward," he's like, "I don't think you did anything, and you've been good, and we're going to give you a raise." And then he gave me a raise. I don't know if that was, and I don't think it was him, like, freaking out, like, "Oh my God, he's going to sue us," you know, or something like that. Because I don't even think you could do that. I don't know what you could do, but I just know that he's like, "I feel bad." He's like, "And you've been here a while, and, you know, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "You know, and I'm going to give you 50 cents and go back there." And I was like, wow, holy shit. Like, and I felt way better, obviously. And unfortunately, his name was Ron. Unfortunately, I think he passed away, like, not that long after. I worked there for 3 years, so I eventually kind of became like the pseudo assistant manager. They would call on me to do, because I started working the counter and looking up parts and ordering parts and creating sales numbers and doing all these different things there. And, you know, I left there after 3 years, and because they closed the store that was near me, and they asked me to work in Boston, and I didn't want to work in Boston, so I declined it. And I was kind of getting done with it, you know. I wanted to grow. I wanted to eventually become the manager of the store. And the fact that they took the store away and then said, "Well, you know, we don't have any manager stuff or anything out here like that, but you can start working as a stock guy. So I didn't want to go from what I was doing there with so much freedom and creativity to working as a stock guy. And one of the problems why the place failed is because they bent over backwards to help other stores that were big established stores, but they did that from the start, so that was a mistake they made. And from there I went on to work at Spencer's Gifts in the mall, and around that time when my ex-girlfriend broke up with me the first time too, so that's when life got really interesting. I worked at Spencer's Gifts, and it was crazy. Like, goth chicks would come in and invite me to parties, and when my girlfriend left me at the time, it was kind of awesome, because it wasn't awesome because I wanted to die, but you know, I started getting drunk and like banging these goth girls at parties, like, and just different people would come in and talk to me about different shit. I met all these people. I met a guy from MTV who like offered me a camera position on this project he was working on. I got to do a little bit of that when he found out that I knew how to use cameras, because we were in the store and I was talking to him. You know, I just talk to everybody, you know, all the time, because that's what I like to do, is be social. Leah hates it, because like I'll be in the movie theater like last night at Star Wars, and like some guy sitting next to me and he mentioned snow caps, and I'll just be like, oh man, I almost got some snow caps, you know, and he's like, yeah, fucking those are the best. I'm like, I couldn't get it because I got a cavity and I got a hole in my tooth, you know. And the next thing you know, we're talking about all this shit, and somebody's calling me on Facebook Messenger, and you know, I just like talking to people. Like, that's what I like doing. So, you know, Spencer's worked because it was like I was doing sales. I became the assistant manager real quick because listen to this, the fucking manager hired me, and then the assistant manager was busted on stealing stuff from the store, and I was like, my God, what is with people and stealing shit from the place they work at? So this assistant manager gets fired, and the person that was working as the general sort of associate in the store quit like right before that. So they, instead of being like the associate, I was like the supervisor. They had some weird system. It was like associate, supervisor, assistant manager, manager, right? So I was hired as an associate, but the supervisor quit. So they hired me as a supervisor because she was like, hey, I don't want to keep you as an associate because you have all this experience as a manager at this other place. I was like, let's make you a supervisor. And I'm like, cool. And then the assistant manager quit after like I was there for like 3 weeks. And she was like, you're really good. I don't want them to bring in somebody else. I want to keep you. I'm going to make you the assistant manager. I know that's it sounds crazy. So I got a pay increase every time they did this, right? So I started at $9 an hour. And then they were like, okay, well, the supervisor, you're going to get $10.25. And then they made me the assistant manager, and then they gave me $11.50, I think it was, an hour. And then, fucking crazy. And then they were like, all right. And then the manager ended up leaving for a while, and I became the manager for like a month or two. And basically what happened was I was so fucked up from my girlfriend leaving me. I used to take breaks from this place to go get drunk. Like, I used to take breaks from this. I used to be like, hey, I'm taking my break. And they'd be like, all right, I make sure everybody was good. I'm like, hey, if anything happens, text me on my cell phone. I'll be at the food court. This is 2006, I believe. And I would go to the food court and eat, but I would also go down to the bar in the mall. And I would have like 5 shots. And I would just come back like like loaded, like fucked up. And I would like hit on girls that came in, like if they talked to me. I wouldn't be creepy, but like I'm saying, like if they like talk to me, like a girl would say like cuz I was like full out, like if you guys know me, like I wasn't wearing like Patriots fucking jerseys and blue pants. I was wearing like goth shit. Like I was fucking wearing crazy shit on purpose cuz I didn't give a fuck. I was being weird. Like I was wearing my like tight like pants and like shit like that with my like dyed hair. Like I had black and purple hair at one point. And I had girls being like oh, I like your hair, or I like your pants. And I'd be like, yeah. I'm like, that's cool. I was like, I like everything about you, and then they'd be like, oh, like, and then you could just tell, you're like, okay. So then I'm like, yo, I was like, well, I'm gonna be out of here like in a little while, and I've got a bunch of alcohol that me and you should drink, and then they'd be like, really? And then it just always happened like that. It was weird. So, like, I would just be a psycho. Or I'd get invited to a party, like, hey, you should come to a party. Or, like, regulars would start coming in, like, people that were like, hey, it's Dan. Let's go see Dan at the fucking Spencer's. Like, he's always there. And then they would come in with, like, one of their friends or somebody else, and then they would be like, hey, we're having a party. You should come to this party, and you should bring alcohol and stuff, And, like, the parties, were like, most of the people at the party were probably, like, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 years old. And, I didn't know what the fuck. So I was like, all right, I'm going to the party, cool. And I'd come to the party. And it was just crazy time, man. It was like the Wild West for me. I had no idea. My life was all fucked up. So let's skip all the shit about my life and go to the next job. The fact of the matter is, I met Leah. And when I met Leah, I left Dappy. I left Spencer's after a little while, and I took a few months off. And I met Leah, and after a little while of being with Leah, I had no job because I left Spencer's. And I had started to become a little bit more sober, and like I wasn't obviously like hooking up with all these girls, but my phone was always ringing from these previous things that were going on. And I was like, man, I have no money. It really hit me that like I think I'd been out of work for 5 months. I think I'd left for 5 months, and you know, Leah was with me, like hanging out with me, like we started going out and stuff, but I had no job. And I'm like, man, what is this girl? Why does this girl like me? I have no job. And I really didn't. Like sometimes I didn't have money for shit. Like she paid for some stuff. And I was like, this is fucking weird. So I literally got a job because I was like, I can't not have a job and have this girlfriend. I was like, this is crazy. I want to get her stuff and things like that. That's how I was thinking. And I just need to get going. So I started working at Tweeter. Tweeter, the fucking, if you don't remember Tweeter, then you're probably too young. But Tweeter was like, you know, kind of like Circuit City, which was like Best Buy. It was Best Buy before there was Best Buy. Man, Andrew's really trying to get a hold of me. Hang on a second. Let me take this call and I'll get back to my story. All right, Tweeter. We left off at Tweeter. And, you know, the best thing about Tweeter was they paid you hourly and it was commission. And I'll never forget the training. It's weird. It's funny with the things you remember. But I will never forget the training at Tweeter. And it was like 4 weeks long. And when I started working there, I remember I bought Leah the Wii. I bought her the Nintendo Wii and the guitar for Guitar Hero and all that shit. And we still have it now. And that was the first thing I bought her. And, you know, I felt good because I had that job. Had to dress up in a suit. You know, I sold quite a few TVs, like made some pretty good money. And then I heard the place was going out of business. You know, for that, they were going out of business. And after working there for 8 months I worked there. And then they went out of business. So I just left one day. I just left the place. But I'll never forget the guy who trained me, you know. And it's funny because he took us to his apartment to do sales tactics and stuff like that. And I remember his apartment was tiny and beat up. And I was like, wow, man, I thought you were like rich. Like you seemed like you were like a top guy here. I thought you'd have a house. And I didn't say that to him, but I thought that in my mind, like, wow, he's got this little apartment. I'm surprised. And I'm like, maybe this company ain't that good. And then I'll never forget my first manager there. When I got there, his name was, I forget his name was Rich, and he had like crossed eyes. And he was just so eccentric and weird. But he was great to work for. You get to work and be like, how's it going, guys? And he had a little mustache. He had like a beard and mustache, and he was like a short guy with a bald head and a cross eyes. And so, and you couldn't help but look at his eyes sometimes. And if you said anything that, like, he would just say this to anything. If you were like, yeah, we opened up the TVs and 2 of the boxes had holes in them. And then he would be like, really? Ridiculous. And then he would go and he would walk away. And he would always say that. He would walk around like all day being like, if anything happened or whatever, his word for it would be ridiculous. And he would say it just like that. And he wasn't, this is really weird, man. I'll never forget that. And then the assistant manager took over and became the manager. And I just didn't like that guy. I remember I just didn't like the dude. And it was terrible. I didn't want to be there anymore because I knew that they were closing. And then I just quit. But yeah, that was there. I was working there. It was all Best Buy's fault, damn it. That must have been around 2007. And that's where we leave the story because I gotta go do a bunch of shit because I can hear chaos going on upstairs. And I gotta go pick up my kid at school and all these things. Now, I could hit pause right now and probably come back and do this, but I want to get this out to you guys. So stay tuned for part 2 of my job history tomorrow. Because there's a lot more to talk about as far as that goes. But we'll leave you at 2007. I don't know how I feel about what I just did talking about this, but kind of interesting, I think. And there's really nothing else I wanted to quickly mention maybe a few things, but I don't know. I'm still in shock over Star Wars. If you guys want to hear the spoilers, that's on Corrupted channel, the Corrupted YouTube channel. And there's that big Navy pilot recalling the UFO incident that's going around everywhere. Former Pentagon UFO official says there's evidence of alien life. I mean, things are getting crazy out there. I just wish we could all know. We could get all the information out there, and it could be divulged by an official here in the U.S. It's really felt like they've been prepping us for years to basically say there's aliens, you know? Because first you start with, like, you allow people to talk, you allow it to go on, you allow the leaks to come out. That way people start, there's a group out there that believe in it. And then eventually you start making little announcements like this, where it's like, yep, you know, out in the open. And then you start making direct announcements about things that you found, and then you wait a year or two and you keep going, and then eventually you release more and you slowly introduce it into the culture, and then it becomes the norm. And everybody goes, yeah, we know about that, those alien things. We know about that. Well, guess what? They're here, and here's one of, you know. And it's like, you know, that would still be crazy, but it would be, it's not just, there's aliens, they're here, this is what happened. Like, that would freak a lot of people out. But I think a lot of us wouldn't be freaked out because we have been desensitized to this. We're looking for this answer now. So hopefully that happens. Or we're all just crazy and looking for something that isn't there, and perhaps these events are from another dimension. They're just bizarre events. Whether there's some kind of scientific reason to them, and they're not aliens, but there's something else going on here. Elements or existence of things that we don't know exist yet. Some kind of matter that we're not aware of. You know, I don't know. There could be all kinds of different reasons and possibilities. But guys, we'll see you tomorrow for more Morning Madness. Episode number 55, where we continue talking about my job shit and whatever current events there are that day. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting, guys. I will see you later, and I'll see you tonight for the SmackDown review as well.